Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on 21 CFR Part 11. We shall wait for a couple of few minutes for the other participants to join in. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mona Lisa Bhagat, and I'm a manager with RiskPro India. I would like to give you a brief overview of RiskPro India. We are a risk management and consulting firm. We are in this business for more than 10 years, having more than 525 clients. Our head office is situated in Mumbai, whereas we have our presence in 7 other cities. We are a 65 plus team members having more than 10 strategic partners. We have our 5 main business verticals: risk advisory, IT advisory, trainings, technology, and recruitment. In risk advisory, we help our clients with internal audits, internal financial controls, ERM and risk assessments, legal compliance audit, branch audits, SOPs, and more. With respect to IT advisory, we help in GDPR compliances, SSA 18, that is SOC audits, various IT reviews and audits, PDP reviews, HIPAA, and many more. With respect to training, we help with online and in-person trainings for enterprise risk management, risk assessment and mitigation, anti-money laundering, anti-bribery and corruption, cyber and information security as per our clients' requirements. With respect to technology, we help our clients with our strategic partners with internal audit software, risk management software, legal compliance software, third-party risk management software, RPA software, and others. With respect to recruitment, we help our clients with full-time and part-time risk and audit professionals and virtual risk managers. Today's webinar is going to be for approximately 60 minutes, out of which 10 minutes will be for question and answer session. During the webinar, all the participants will be on mute mode, that is listen only mode. If any participant would like to ask any questions, I would request them to write it in the chat box and the same will be answered in the end of the webinar. In case any participant is facing any issue like not listening, cannot hear the speaker or cannot view the PPT, then I would request them to re-log in for the webinar. Today's webinar, the speaker is Mr. Arun Kohli, who is working with RiskPro India for information security. He is a qualified engineer in computer sciences with postgraduate diploma in advanced computing. He is a certified Microsoft Azure AI engineer. He has served leading healthcare IT companies like Siemens, Cerner, and Philips over 23 years. 2 decades of this was dedicated to realization of products for medical devices and digital health. He has extensive experience in managing digital health for its regulatory evaluation and assessments. He has achieved various certifications like ISO 13485 2016 and ISO 27001, DevOps with Lean and Agile. He aims to promote use of certified and compliant digital health technologies, meeting requirements like quality, performance, and security. These are various other certificates that he has achieved. I would now like to hand it over to Mr. Arun Kohli.
Thank you, Mona Lisa, and welcome everybody to this webinar. This webinar is regulated with 21 CFR Part 11 cloud-based GxP compliance, which we will be discussing it today. So before going into the agenda of the meeting, I would like to thank everyone for joining this webinar on behalf of RiskPro. So today's agenda is, we have categorized as one overview of 21 CFR Part 11. We will provide a high-level structure of what the Part 11 consists of. Then we will look at digital transformation, why it is important for licensed organizations why they are attracted towards the digital transformations as a catchy word, or what we can say is yeah, hello.
So we can hear you.
Yeah. So digital transformations, what we were discussing, that why it is important for the organization. Shared responsibilities are something which is coming up because of the impact of the digital transformations, where earlier we used to have on-premise solutions which are there. All the responsibilities were with the organization who were developing the applications, or who were using these applications. So the data resides within the premise, or within the four walls of an organization. But with the internet and the cloud technologies, this data has gone beyond that. So it is not restricted toward the four walls of the organizations, but on the cloud. And we will look at what are the risks which are having when we are looking from the shared responsibilities perspective. FDA expects us that we should qualify as well as validate our systems which we are using for the GxP in a GxP environment. So we will discuss from that perspective the qualifications and the validation aspects of that. And the last point, what we will be looking at is the considerations which we have to take into account when we are meeting our Part 11 requirements. So this is a very high-level structure of the compliance itself, which is basically. So broadly speaking, there are two parts to it when we are discussing that. So one part is related with the electronic records and another part which is related with the electronic signatures. As you can see it in part B, which is related with the electronic records for which we are submitting it to the FDA, as well as the electronic signatures. That means in case the documents which have to be submitted to the FDA, they are electronically submitted. We call it as integrity, confidentiality of those records should be maintained and is equivalent to if the same record being submitted to the FDA with the signatures which are there. So from that aspect, we have to look at even from the perspective of an electronic record, so that the integrity of the data is established and maintained for a period where they can have. Now, here in today's discussion, we will more focus towards the electronic records part. Electronic signatures are not so much important when we are looking from the cloud perspective, because these are electronic or digital signatures which are there. They should be validated in a very different way. But from the cloud perspective, electronic records are there because the data what we are storing on the cloud has to be protected. What we need to do it. Now, from those perspective, we will look at what is the differentiation between a closed system, or what is the difference between an open system which is there. When the data goes to the cloud, it becomes more of an open system. If it is on the premise which is there, we call it as a closed system. So the question arises where we talked about the cloud, which is there in our previous discussion from the open and closed system, which is there. So, is that digital transformation initiatives are performed by your organizations? So, we will have this first pool question, which will be shared by members.
I've launched the first question. I'll be closing the poll in 5 seconds. Sir, I've shared the poll.
Thank you, Monas. So, most of the attendees have, we can say, are aware of digital transformation initiatives within our group. They have heard about it, as well as the others which haven't heard, or these initiative has not been started. It will be a good learning curve for them as we move forward. Thank you.
Sir, I've closed it.
Thank you. So, what is digital transformations, and why it is something which is attracting the life science industry, which is there? So, the challenges which are there at this point of time, there is a pressure for streamlining the process, which is there, increasing efficiency within the system, reducing the cost, which is there, while what we can say, the patient safety, product quality, and data integrity are some of the aspects which they are concerned about it. So these are some of the major concerns which the life science organizations wants to address when they are going for digital transformations, which are there. Why? What are the benefits which are we are having from that? Is that we can scale up, scale down, which is the as and when required. That means if I am having sorry, if I'm having a requirement that some thousands of customers I want to include within my applications, which is there, that can be done very easily from the scalability point of view to include those customers within the application within no time or with very minimal cost, which is there. So that is what the life science industries are looking forward to, as well as the global reach, which is there. So we are not restricted with the geographical boundaries, because on-premise will remain within the geographical boundaries, which is there. But here we can have a global reach when we are addressing towards that. Now, from the digital transformation perspective, which is our life science industry, we call it as GxP industry 2, which is what they are doing it when they talk about the digital transformations. So we are having the cloud providers which are there, just like Azure is from Microsoft, which is there, AWS from Amazon, Google has having that, and other hyper scale cloud providers which are providing these type of services, and they want to leverage those services within their applications. The important point which they would like to have is a trusted cloud partner from their perspective. Why? Because this will help build their confidence when they are shortening their time to market, which is there, reducing costs, which is there, operational efficiencies, which they want to increase it, and their scientific innovations can be accelerated with that. One of the things which they are concerned about it is that the applications, because on-premise, the security, privacy, transparency, and compliance, they don't want to compromise on that. So from the expectation from the cloud service provider is that they should also be providing these type of services when they are using or leveraging the cloud for their data, if they want to put it on the cloud itself. So these are some of the aspects or the attributes with the GxP companies they are looking at when they are looking from the digital transformation perspective. So when we talked about a little bit about the digital transformation and the cloud strategy which is there, what means it to the life science organization? That means when they are meeting their regulatory compliance requirements, which is just like FDA requirements of electronic records and electronic signatures, and our computerized system, which is Annex 11. So these are some of the very, very commonly used terminologies when we talk about from the life science industry, which is there. So there will be a shared responsibilities between the cloud provider and the life science organizations which are there for meeting these requirements. We will look into more details into that. So what they will assess when they are looking at from the shared responsibility perspective, adequacy of cloud service providers, processes and controls. So they will look at from that perspective to assure that the confidentiality, integrity and availability of their data, which is stored on the cloud, shall be maintained at all the time. So those are the things which they will be what is there in their mind, basically. So what is the benefit they are getting out of that? Is the security is a multi-level security, what is there, as well as governance technologies are the latest one, what they will get it when they are moving towards that. The operational practices which are there, best practices within the other industries, they can follow also those ones. So compliance policies which are related from the data privacy and integrity perspective, they also, because the other industries are also using that, they leverage those ones, basically. And the cloud service provider procedural technical controls. So one of the things which they will be looking at, because they become the critical suppliers, to the life science organizations. So they want that the cloud service provider, the trusted cloud service provider, is audited regularly, which is there verified and effectively by an independent third-party auditors, so that the confidence they are having can be can be maintained all the times, and they can have an assurance that what they are using is of a particular standard. So there are some other aspects which I thought of to just touch point from the perspective of shared responsibilities. So now, what we are, when we are talking about the shared responsibilities, what we are talking about is the management, customer management of risk, which is there. What is there? So, like, if we talk about so we are having, as in this pictorial diagram, we are presenting that we have divided this into on-premise, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So these are the terminologies which are being used commonly when we are talking from the services which are provided by the cloud service providers which are there. So in this aspect, if we look at from the data perspective, its classification and accountability. It is responsibility of the life science organization, either on-prem, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or a software as a service, because the data itself is the responsibility of the life science organization, and they are responsible for that. So endpoint protections which are there when we talk about from the accountability or we can say identity perspective. So endpoint protections are from on-prem perspective, it is always will be within the organization, life science organization. But as we move towards the other services, as infrastructure, if we are just taking the infrastructure as a service from the cloud provider, then that responsibility also becomes the responsibility of the life science organization. But if I'm taking some of the platform capabilities or as a services, software as a service aspects, these are some of the things which become the shared one, which are there. Identity and access management is also the similar way as we have discussed from the client end protection mechanism, which is there. Application level controls also are also from the aspects of the previous ones which we have discussed. There we are talking from the shared management of the risk, which is there. From the network control, host infrastructure, and physical security, which is there, the type of controls what the organization is having will get reduced when we are talking from the software as a service provider or platform as a service provider, because those are some of the responsibilities which the cloud providers takes those ones within themselves and says that they are going to do it. So from those aspects, we now have a clear picture when we talk about the shared responsibilities. Where are my boundaries? What I need to take control of it when from the perspective of a life science organization. So the next question is, are we handling patient data or healthcare data within your organization?
Sir, I've shared the poll.
Thank you.
I will be closing the poll.
Right.
Sir, I've shared the poll.
Thank you. So today's means we are having audience where very few people are handling the patient data. But the others are not handling the patient data or healthcare data. But this information, because FDA, when we talk about the FDA perspective, those are related from the healthcare or health insurance and portability accountability act, which is there for those type of records. If they have to be submitted in you can say to the FDA for some type of investigations or post processing of their data, which is there, those are the aspects which we are dealing for today. But thank you, this is giving us the idea what we have to focus on at this within our org. So why we said that, okay, healthcare data in terms of qualification, because we were talking from the aspects of qualification and validation of the GxP application which is there. When our application is handling these types of data which is there, or related data, which is also when we talk from the pharmaceutical industry perspective, their production environment, the applications which are being used for them. So they want them to be secured as well as in validated state at all the time. So the organization has to ensure that these are some of the things which they have to take into consideration. So when we are talking from the qualification and validation state, what are the strategies which we have to take into account when we are dealing with such a application? So the risks which we have to take into account for a GxP application when we are looking from the cloud perspective, and what are the mitigations are in place. We also look at the internal quality and information technology procedures which are there that has to be adapted according to the cloud-based applications which are there. And the persons are trained appropriately on these new technologies. So those are the aspects which the company has to strategize and put a comprehensive strategy in place. Then they have to do a due diligence and assessment of their cloud service provider. How trustworthy it is, basically. The systems comes later part, where what be the attributes which we look into, because this will not be different from on-premise which is there, but the same type of expectations are there when we are looking at from the cloud perspective too. So we are looking at from resilience, performance, data security, and confidentiality perspective of our systems. Our infrastructure, which are virtual, if we are using infrastructure as a service, those service has to be in the qualified state and should be maintained in that state, which is there. The data integrity and compliance, where shall meet all the regulated requirements. These are and we should have a strategy in place for those ones. The data backup recovery and data backup and recovery of the data which is there. So those are the procedures should be in place, because there are record retention expectations from FDA. Those has to be meet our qualification requirements. So looking at computerized systems, the life cycle of it, we are looking at from planning, basically, that in the life cycle, we need to do a planning part of it. As we said, we need to strategize on the attributes which we have listed, we have discussed previously. We also look at from the specification and designs of it, how our systems are resilient, because this is not something which is new, but what is expected from on-premise application, which is a GxP application, will be there. The same type of expectations are there from the cloud perspective too when we are designing. But with the requirements of additional requirements of our security and integrity of the data. Risk assessments, qualification and planning testing, which is there. Procurement and installation, install qualification, what we are saying that. So those are the aspects which we look into it. And then operational qualification and acceptance. are the another stage which is there, which we have to look into that, and we have to devise a strategy for it, and reporting and handover, which is the release of the software when we are doing it, how we are doing it. So this is a cycle which in normal GxP applications will go through, and that's how we will be devising the system, or what we can say, our quality system based on these applications as well as the expectations which are there. This brings us to another question of that. What do you think about the level of confidentiality, integrity of the data can be achieved from other clouds, basically?
Sir, I've shared the poll.
Thank you.
I will close the poll now.
Sure.
I have shared the poll.
Thank you. So, most of the people think that they are secured, which is there. But we are having some audience within our this webinar where they say vulnerable. Yes, it is vulnerable. That's why we are having some type of breaches which are occurring, and we hear a lot about that. They are vulnerable. They are. I will mute for a couple of minutes because there is a train which is passing by. Thank you. So they are vulnerable. That's why we are having breaches for that. But if we are having some effective our assessments, we put the right type of controls which are there, we can achieve it as a secure one. Thank you.
I've closed the poll.
Yeah. So let us look into the considerations which are required from Part 11 compliance perspective when we are, what are the expectations or what are the requirements what we are having from the FDA, which we need to meet it. Else while it becomes a non-compliant, basically. Now, here what we are having is that they call it as validation of the system where we are having. So what the expectation is that we have to have a formal controls for governance, software and hardware aspects of it, where the design, development, delivery, and operations comes into picture for that, as we have seen in our life cycles too. So life cycle, what we are looking at from the design perspective, which is there, from the development part, which is there, delivery of that, as well as the operations part of it. So we should have a formal. When we talk about the formal, that means the review and approval processes it should be formally documented, and the record should be produced for those which is there. So formally, the quality assurance testing should be performed and should be assessed based on the acceptance criteria. So we should define the acceptance criteria. What are our acceptance criteria which are there? Based on those ones, the compliance or the validation of the system should be assessed. The another aspect or the requirement which we are having is that generation of accurate and complete copies of the records what we are having. That means The data what we are storing on a system, what we are having, there should be a mechanism where we can leverage the export functionality of that, and the integrity of the data should be maintained for that. Another aspects which are there, protection and retrieval, which is there. So here what we have to consider is that the defined retention period which we are having. So based on the regulatory requirements, legal requirements of that region which is there, or any other business requirement shall be considered when we are looking at this particular requirement or compliance means expectation from the FDA. So we should have the mechanism, policies and procedures in place so that we can, you can say, we can be compliant when we are looking from our cloud-based system too. So limiting access to unauthorized individual, as we said that we are vulnerable. There are mechanisms in place where we can make it as a secure one. So there are some mechanisms which we should take leverage of that, just like multi-factor authentications, not only for the users which are there, but other than that which are having high level of access, just like admin user which are there. So those are the best practices which we should be following and taken into account when we are meeting these requirements. We also look at multi-factor authentication for management of the tasks which are there that we need to accomplish that. The other requirement is that secure computer-generated timestamp audit trails. This is very, very important aspect. And most of the GxP applications or the systems, they have to do it wherever they are. They are either on cloud or taking some services from the cloud or on-premise. They have to do it. What we need to check it here, what we need to track in our audit trail is the creation, modification, deletion of the data which is there, where we are processing parameters and their results, basically what we are in. Track the actions which are there at the record and at the system level. So these are the aspects which we should be taken into account when we are looking. And when the FDA asks for some type of investigations or inspection, they will look into these aspects. So another aspect which they will be looking at, enforcing permitted sequence of events. So what is the sequence of events we are talking about? We are talking about the permitted ones. That means if something has been reviewed and approved within the application, GxP application, if it is reopens that, the sequence of events should be traced back and the traceability can be established for that. That is one step which we are talking about from the sequence of step perspective, and the events that has happened that was the trigger for making the modifications to the record which we have already approved that. So all those things has to be taken into account when we are looking at that. So it depends on the use cases. So various use cases will be there within the GxP application and the processes which are there. So those are the things which we have to consider it when we are making this requirement, our FDA compliance requirement, to be compliant within the GxP system, either on-premise or on the cloud. Authorities check which is there. So there are different mechanisms which are which we can take leverage of. Active Directory is one of them, where it can be used for creation of the security groups, which can be assigned with certain roles and responsibilities which are there, and perform and given the permissions to perform the specific activities which their roles define that. So based on the specific use cases, we can define that. Now, this is very important from the perspective of device checks. As we are going mobile, we are having handheld devices or Internet of Things which are there. We have done just a project which was related with the handheld devices, just like our smartphone, which is there. They want to record some inputs from the pharmaceutical manufacturing side of that plant. So device checks for that particular handheld device should also be taken into account. We need to implement those requirements which are there because our source of data input becomes a handheld devices, either with a QR code, snapshots, or some other mechanism which they want to do it. But those has to be recorded, timestamped, and archived for a long-term archival as required by the regulatory requirements. So those are the aspects which we need to look into that. FDA give very much importance on the training aspects for the organization who is handling. They are not only looking from the training aspects of the personals which are within the organizations, the other type of personnel which are there available within the organization, just like the contractors or others. So they are adequately trained. Basically, the expectation is that so that they can perform their duties, they are qualified to perform their duties. So that's why training becomes a very, very important aspect from the FDA perspective. So we say it as written policies for accountability. Why we are, what is the expectation from this requirement, when we are written. So we are enforcing the written policies so that the person can be accountable and responsible. If he does the electronic signatures, tomorrow he should be accountable for that, for the actions he has performed, basically. It is not just to penalize the things, but keeping a track of the things from the FDA perspective, that looking at from a person, is he qualified to do that operations? Is he having the proper type of, you can say, identity? Is he having particular definite type of rules, what he is trying to perform those ones? So that the integrity of that one, confidentiality of the data, that can be maintained when we are looking at from that perspective. That's why written policies for accountability is very, very important from the FDA perspective, which is there. As we said that, okay, we have discussed the life cycle of our system, the GxP system. Those are we should establish the controls. That means we should have a software development life cycle, which should be clearly defined. What are our milestones? What are our acceptance criteria which are there? Who will be our reviewers? If some independent reviewers, just like us, what we are having, RiskPro can be an independent reviewer, where when we look at their policies or the validation aspect of that, we can state as an independent reviewer that, okay, you are performing what you are saying. So those are the controls that should be established, and you maintain, not only establish, but also maintain throughout the life cycle of the application what we are using. So this is very important from that point of view. So controls, we talked about the expectations from the system which is there. This is applicable for control from the control of a closed system, that means on-premise what we are having. But if we are taking the data to the cloud, from the cloud perspective, that becomes an open system. So what are the additional things which we need to look into it when we are? So what we need to check is that the data, when we are exchanging it electronically, those ones, the data in transit, that is where the data integrity remains, as well as the confidentiality of it. and data at rest on the cloud, on the internet, if it has been kept, those are the aspects which we have to look into it. And those are the risks which we have to define it in case it is there. So the system should be built with its built-in checks for the correct and secure entry and processing of data that is on the internet, which is there, to minimize that risk. This concludes our today's session from the content perspective, but the forum is open for the questions.
I would request everyone, those who have questions, to please write in the questions tab. Arun sir, there is one question. Is there a regulatory GxP compliance mandatory requirement for 3PL in India?
So, Miss, can you repeat the question, please?
Is there a regulatory GxP compliance mandatory requirement for 3PL in India?
3PL. I'm not aware of 3PL, but we can, if the questions can be elaborated, we can help them out. So this is for all the systems what we are looking at when they are used in the pharmaceutical industries. So they have to be compliant with the Part 11. So even Government of India states that, because there is something called free sale certificate what we are having. That means if we are exporting something which are being manufactured here in India, and that is being exported to the US basically, then the FDA is having a role where they can do an inspection, and they expect that manufacturing unit which is there, they should be compliant with the FDA requirements. From that aspect, which we have to be compliant from the FDA perspective. But as the governments are not burning too much from the compliance perspective, they are harmonizing with them. And they even in India, the government says that if you are Part 11 compliant, please state that, okay, you are Part 11 compliant because it's a universal something accepted towards that, we will take into account. I hope I am answering that question.
Sir, the same person has just mentioned 3PL are logistics third party.
Right. So if you are generating the record, because these are even the logistics which we are having, those are also because the temperature has to be controlled, has to be monitored, just like in the vaccine, what we are having in a use case scenario where we are transporting vaccine from one place to another place. Those are the quality records after the post productions which are there, and they are monitored, which are there. The expectation is that those records should be Part 11 compliant.
If anyone has any questions, I request them to write in the questions tab, please. Arun sir, I don't think so there are any questions coming in. So if anybody has any questions for us, they can always write on info@riskpro.in. Thank you, Arun sir, for a wonderful webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mona Lisa, for supporting me throughout this journey. It is great.
Arun sir,
thank you.
Arun sir, sorry, the one question the questions have come in.
Yeah,
the question is there a relationship between CFR 11 and HIPAA?
Right. Again, we have to look at from the perspective HIPAA is for protection of patient data, which is there. So we have to look at it from that perspective. But if FDA asks us that those records has to be submitted, just like our electronic health records, which are there, right? They contain the patient data, but FDA wants them to be reviewed or submitted to them, basically. As an example, I can give you from my experience, the Cerner, Millennium are having pages where they are having electronic health records, which are there. Those are the records which has to be certified. They are certifying those records, basically. Now they come under the FDA purview. The FDA can ask those records because those data what we are generating from the application what we are having, Millennium, basically. Here in this case, healthcare data protection, what we are saying that is the data what has gone into the electronic health record. But as an evidence that to be submitted to the FDA, if some incidents happens in the field, which is there, and it happens, is from our practical experience, which is there, it happens that. Those records, if they have to be submitted, those are the records, they have to be Part 11 compliant. And for the mitigation of those type of risks, which are the regulatory risks, the FDA means the organization, just like Cerner, will ensure that all their systems are Part 11 compliant too. Hope I'm answering that question.
The next question is, why is this regulatory compliance only for MT life sciences?
I couldn't get the question. Sorry.
Sorry. Why is this regulatory compliance only for MT life sciences?
Right. The life science organizations are interacting with FDA very closely, because if the target market is US for a life science organization, which most of the organization will have, then they have to adhere to that, because they have to export it and FDA can come and do an inspection. So if FDA comes and does an inspection, which is there, what they are looking at, they are looking at the regulations which are applicable to the US market, which is there. From that perspective, the organizations, if the target market is US for them, if they want to sell the product to the US market, they have to be compliant with the FDA for the Part 11 compliance. Now, for other markets which are having low level of compliance, which are there, because FDA is at a stringent level, they accept the if you are compliant with those type of regulations, they want, because the certain level of quality is maintained with them. They also will allow the products to enter into their market if you are compliant with the FDA regulations. So those are the aspects when the company strategize, they want to be compliant with that. They make a comprehensive strategy that not only they are looking at from the FDA, from the US market perspective, but the allied markets, just like Africa, Middle East, or other which are there, which are not having their own regulations which are there. So those are the regions where they want to have a single compliance with multiple entry into the market if they are compliant with that. So to reduce the compliance requirements for various markets, they will go for a higher standard and they will comply with.
Is it FMCG industry also?
Yes, because it's a food and drug authority which is there. So the records which are submitted to the FDA for the FMC for the other aspects which are there, not from the medical device, if they have to be submitting their records to the FDA, they have to be compliant with the Part 11. There is no other requirement which is there for them.
I think we are done with the questions here. Arun sir?
Right.
Arun
I
sir?
thank you. Yeah, hello. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are done with the questions now.
Uh, Thank you so much, Mona Lisa, for supporting, and I will thank RiskPro for providing this opportunity. We had a wonderful session with wonderful questions which are there. We will look forward for your presence for other seminars which are upcoming.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Arun
you.
sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.